Hey guys, before winter wipes out your entire garden, there's actually certain plants that you can save, bring it indoor to overwinter so that you don't have to start from scratch next spring. So in today's video, we'll talk about the plants that you can bring inside to overwinter, how to care for them so that they can maintain their health so that they can be ready to go outside when it's spring again. A lot of the plants that we grow in the spring and summer are warm weather, heat-loving plants. So they don't do well in places that freeze over. That's why we consider them as annuals. But if you put them in the right place, like in the tropics, they will grow and grow and grow for at least a few years. And here I'm based in Southern California. We're in zone 10. It doesn't get cold enough for these plants to die back. A lot of these plants that if you live in like zone 9 or especially in zone 8 and anywhere colder than that, those plants are considered more like annuals. But for me, they go dormant during the winter. For example, chili peppers. That's one of the plants you can actually overwinter, and I highly suggest this one, especially if you're growing a bunch of varieties and you can pick out a couple that are your favorites, because peppers take quite a long time starting from seed. A lot of plants that we can start off from seed, it's a lot of fun, but chili peppers I feel like takes a little longer to grow out from seed. So I would love to get a head start if I can. I know it's not realistic to be saving every single one of your plants to overwinter. And so just pick out a few of your favorites and bring them inside. Chilies, in Southern California, it doesn't get cold enough to kill them off, but it also isn't warm enough for them to keep growing. So they just become more stagnant. They just stop producing. They might even drop the leaves, which is quite normal for a lot of these plants that we grow during the warmer season. It's just not cold enough here to kill them off. So what I like to do is cut them back. I either can dig them up, or if they're in a container, I still would just cut them back. And then if they're in a raised bed, I can open up more room to grow some other cool weather plants. But for example, chilies, just like other plants that you can overwinter, you usually want to cut them back at least half the size. Roughly, you want to cut back about 50 to 75% of the plant. So you're left with about a third of the plant. If you're not comfortable to do that, to cut back that much, at least cut back half the size. So you have this nice size that you can bring indoor. If you're growing in the ground, you can carefully dig it up. Just dig it up maybe 12 to 15 inches away from the base of the plant so you don't disturb the root ball. Now, if you want to be really cautious about not bringing in any kind of bacteria or pests into the house, you can carefully hose it down. But at least I would hose off the top of the plants just in case you're bringing any kind of pests indoors. You can even soak it so that you can remove a lot of the soil to replace with some fresh ones. For potting soil, you want to use the one that says for indoor use. Don't get the ones that's for garden beds, the ones for outdoors, because it's going to stink up, it's going to breed bacteria. The next thing you want to do is to trim back the plants. Any kind of bad parts, dead parts, stems that are crossing each other. This is a really good time for you to prune your plants back so that in spring, when everything warms up, they're going to start to sprout, put out new growth, and it's just going to be a more dense, compact, bushy kind of a plant that's going to, produce more in a small amount of space. Another thing is you want to make sure to have good air circulation in this space so that it wouldn't be as likely to breed bacteria. Hold on, I'm going to need my jacket. You also want to look for a bright space. A south or even a southwest facing window would be ideal. Otherwise, at least a really bright room. Or you can use grow lights. Now, we're not really looking for vegetative growth, so you just need the plant to sustain, not to thrive, but more like putting the plants on a pause. So all you need is, if it's in a dark room or a room that doesn't have natural lights, put shop lights in. Now we trimmed it back, we got the lights, and next we're going to talk about watering. I generally do filtered water for all my plants, but it's not the end of the world. If you're going to use tap water, that's fine. But actually the most important thing is that you don't overwater. It's better to slightly underwater than to overwater, especially with indoor gardening, because there's less air circulation, there's no sun, it's not warm enough. The plants are not growing, and when the plants are not growing, they're not really using up that much water. So you're more likely to cause root rot if you water too much. So watering becomes more like 50% than how I would be doing it outside. But if you're not sure about it, the best thing to do is always that finger test. Just poke your finger in and check 1 to 2 inches deep to make sure that it is dry before you water again. Also leave a plate or a saucer underneath. One is to water from there to allow the plant to take up as much water as it needs rather than you giving it telling them how much they should have, and then the excess water would just stay or drain back out in the saucepan. So yes, it's very important to have a tray under to catch excess water or to use it for watering whenever you're growing anything indoor. And you can do this actually not just for peppers, but you can do this for eggplants, for lemongrass, for some of your herbs. Rosemary, for example, really great that you can cut them back, or you can even make cuttings to put them on the windowsill and have a little bit of fresh rosemary throughout the season. Now, rosemary and basil are both very easy to root in water. You can either put them in soil to root, or you can just put them in water. Just cut a few inches off the top of it. Find a stem that's still green, but it's nice and firm, but not woody. You cut that and you just pluck off the couple of inches on the bottom where you would put in the water. You can even cut the bigger leaves to half their size. This would help them to root faster. Just keep it in water for a few weeks. You're going to start noticing there's root growth, and then you can plant them. Basil is really easy to root that way, and so you can produce some of these and leave it on the windowsill to have a little bit of fresh air for your meals. Now, basil is one that you can also cut back, but when you cut back any kind of remaining leaves, you're going to notice it seems to be more like going through this transplant shock very quickly with basil. I find that basil, with their leaves being so delicate, and the plant itself is just more like sensitive to the season or something. When they're so used to the outdoors, they're gonna have a bit more of a tough time transitioning indoors. Doesn't mean it would necessarily die, but it might go in quite a bit of shock. So just don't be too surprised by that. That's why it's also good for something like basil to take cuttings to have backups. Lemongrass. Lemongrass is one of those herbs that I think it's definitely worth bringing inside, because I don't really want to start these from seed all over again. And once they start feeling the warmth, they're going to kind of grow again very quickly, so you can start harvesting again. And all you have to do is just to cut all those flat leaves on the top off and pot them up that way. So everything that you bring inside that I just mentioned is just the same thing. You cut it back to size, hose it off, clean it really well. The next one I think you really should overwinter is the moringa. This is a beautiful, nutritious vegetable that takes really long to germinate, so I highly suggest that you bring it indoors if you can. The best thing to do is to cut it back, because that is actually how you maintain moringa anyway in the tropics. You can just hack it down to the ground or leave just like a few inches, and it will just start sprouting from the very base of the plant. So you can do the same when you're growing them in a container. In fact, in some places in Asia, I've seen them just growing moringa instead of as a tree. They grow them in 5-gallon, 7-gallon pots, and they grow multiples of them on the rooftop or on their balconies just so they can snip them off like vegetables. You can do the same with moringa when you're growing them. Just cut them back and bring it inside. You may just see nothing but a stump for a few months, but when it's warm out, they'll start to sprout again so that you don't have to start them from seed. Now, my last suggestion to you, and thank you so much for making this far in the video with me, we're going to talk about the dahlias. Now, dahlias are such beautiful flowers. They grow from these tubers, and the tubers are edible. In parts of Mexico, in the olden times, they actually grow this as food. Dahlias are beautiful flowers. They come in all shapes, sizes, colors, different heights. What you can do if you're growing it in, say, even up to zone 8, you should be digging them up. Dahlias are from a warmer place, so in the winter, they would freeze to death if you're not going to dig them back up. So if you're growing them in a zone like maybe even zone 8, you would have to mulch really heavily. But if you're in zone 7 or anywhere colder, you definitely want to dig them up. Dahlias in Southern California usually would die off in the colder times, but last winter they actually continued to grow. I even got a couple of blooms, but usually in the tropics, they might even cut them back during the heat of summer. When it gets too hot, the flowers would start to decline, and that's actually a good time to cut them back all the way down, just leaving a few inches off the ground so that they can collect the energy and come back stronger, come back with more growth, more dense growth, and have bigger, fuller flowers. And normally they would do that once a year. So if you live in a colder climate, you definitely would be doing that naturally, right? Once the first frost hits, all these dahlias are going to die back, and that's the time when you would cut them back to a dig up to store. Now you can keep it in the ground until, dig them up before the actual freeze, because you actually can kill them off if the ground gets to like frozen. Or if you don't want to constantly be checking the weather to see when you should dig them up, just go ahead and dig up these dahlia tubers as soon as the first frost hits and they die back. Cut them back down and, dig them up. Just carefully take a brush and brush off all the soil. Give it about 1 to 2 weeks long to allow the skin to thicken so it's better for storage. And what you want to do is to keep the bulbs or the tubers upside down. So if there's any excess moisture, you can allow it to drain and not cause any rotting. Then you can put them away in a paper bag and keep it in a cool, dark place. Normally a basement would be probably the most ideal place I can think of in a house. Or for me, it would be in the garage, somewhere between 40 to 50 Fahrenheit and about roughly 70% humidity. So if it's too dry, you're going to start seeing that getting a little soft. They'll kind of get a little more shrinking, like shrivelly. At that point, you can just give it a light mist of some water and just check at it, like once a month or something to see if they're doing okay. And if it's too humid in your space, they might start to rot. You'll get a funky smell, or they'll start getting mushy, soft. So just be careful on that. Keep check on them. Dahlias is not really part of the overwintering. It's more like a garden, I guess, a maintenance. So I guess just consider this one as a bonus tip. Before we go, I just want to remind you to harden off your plants once spring arrives. Start by taking them outside for a few hours each day, then gradually increase the time so that they can adjust to the outdoor environment. That's it. I hope this helps your plants transition smoothly indoors for the winter and back outside again in spring. Thank you so much, you guys, for making all the way through in this video with me. Let me know in the comments if you overwinter any of your plants. I'd love to know what they are. And if you have any tips for us, of course, please share them down below. If you'd like to support this channel, go check out my garden shop at wendyland.com. I'll put the link down below for you. More gardening tips and what I'm planting in the fall. Be sure to check out that video up there, and I'll see you back here in the next one. Bye!